Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Ready for another week? Do you know what's going to happen next week? Next week's going to be Thanksgiving on Thursday. So, usually in my experience with my East Asian students, they're not too excited about turkey. Okay, you cook it, it smells. You eat it, it's dry. So, but I would still recommend having a turkey dinner someplace. Obviously, a restaurant that has to have outside seating. So my technique, if I find the turkey meat a little dry, I put some cranberry sauce on it. And that makes it a little softer, a little easier to eat. So the next time I see you, it will be after Thanksgiving. So I hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving. And that's for everybody. Okay. This lesson is scheduled for the 23rd of November. So that's why I'm saying that. Okay. All right. So let me head on over to the reading material. Okay. Should probably try to minimize myself here. Get myself out of the way. Like I said, you don't need to see me. And then start slideshow. Go to the beginning. We have our initial screen. School code ENG 103, public speaking. Week 7. So that's the big one you need to know. It's week 7. Okay, so like I said, next week will be Thanksgiving. Well, actually, the week of this lesson, but towards the end. So we're gonna be getting close to December, and then you know what that means. Christmas is around the corner. So don't worry. I hope the ghosts don't come back and give me a hard time tonight. Otherwise, I'll call the police. But you know what I mean. Okay. All right. Okay, so this week's topic is writing the speech. If you remember, well, last week was before you write the speech. So logically, the next step is writing a speech. And that's kind of in depth. We might have this for a couple of weeks, okay, just to let you know. All right, so I'll slowly get into the material. Someone, who could that be? Could it be Temujin? Yongpil? Who knows? Someone once remarked, which means said, that sense of saying, that the strongest memory is weaker than the palest ink. Okay, I know it's going to sound strange to you. Palest is something you have, let's say in colors, you have white, then you have pale, which means it's even lighter than white. Usually, if the doctor thinks you look sick, he's always going to say, wow, you look pale. So what they're comparing here is the strongest memory is weaker than the palest ink. So I'll read a little more and then I'll tie it together. Only an egomaniac would rely completely on memory for a speech of any length. And only the misguided try to develop talking notes without first writing out the entire speech. Okay. Actually, what's contained here are strategies. And I must explain these. So Like I've told you in the past before, you know, I've usually had young guys that don't think they have to pay attention in class and learn rules and techniques that would make their speech very easy to do on the final day, right? Instead, you know, I'll give you one example. This guy was a DJ. He was going to talk about DJing. And he felt, why do I have to learn these techniques, man? I know all there is to know about DJing, which is fine and dandy, but what do you know about giving a speech, right? So he then promised me towards the end, because I kept on trying to help him, that he would study, put it together, make an outline, do all the techniques I tell you to do. So when I saw him start the speech, I could tell he didn't do anything. So he started out okay, you know, he tried to get fancy, yo, yo, yup, yup. But then without an organized list in his head of what he wanted to talk about, what he wanted to emphasize, he started losing it within the first couple of minutes. And then you could see his mind racing around. Did I say this? Have I talked about that? Did I connect? Oh my God. And his speech just fell apart. So it didn't matter. He just went all on memory. That's why it says only an egomaniac, someone with too much ego, would rely completely on memory for a speech of any length. Then the second confusion is a person, again, who doesn't outline the speech and doesn't make a structure, just makes some haphazard notes, and then it's going to hold them up and you know, change them in his hands. So what happens there again is there's no structure. And God forbid the person drops the notes, then they're really confused. What order is this? What am I doing here? What was step one? And it just looks bad. So those are two strategies not to have. I know here's another misconception. A lot of people think a speech is like the guy that comes up and does the stand-up comedy, right? And you look at that and you think that's easy. You just go up there and tell jokes and be funny. But you have to realize those professionals, they have an outline just like a speech, and they've timed their whole routine and know exactly the jokes they're going to tell. So that's why they look so comfortable. And they've rehearsed it, which of course my guys don't do most of the time, and practiced it. So they know it by memory. But it looks easy, right? But that's because they've done the work. So don't just go on your memory or make a couple of misguided notes out of order that you're going to take up and use at the speech. Okay. So I'm going to give you next. There are 5 good reasons you should always write out your speech beforehand. Okay. 1, it is the only way to ensure that you develop a consistent message. Again, a consistent message is very important. You know, I've had people maybe write out half the speech. So again, let's say their speech is on hot dogs. So they start pretty good. They have a pretty good intro. They're talking about hot dogs. And then somehow, some way, because all they concentrated on was the intro and then they got bored, they start talking about hamburgers. And then by the end of the speech, it turns into pizzas. And then the whole thing is like a fast food paper. But the specific topic was supposed to be about hot dogs. So in that case, you do not have a consistent message. Okay? Now, you can vary the hot dogs that you talk about, and that would still be a consistent message. So what I mean is you can start out and talk about regular hot dogs, then chili dogs, corn dogs, you know, Mexican hot dogs, right? So there's a nice variety because a lot of people think I gotta do a variety. That's why they slip from hot dogs to hamburgers to pizzas, but that's not consistent. But keep it in the hot dog family. That's a consistent message. Okay. On to reason two. Two, you can time how long it takes to read it using appropriate pacing and emphasis. And the most accurate way to check the timing is by rehearsing with a stopwatch. So that's really good too. And most students don't do that either. Okay, so let's say, again, your speech is on hot dogs and you're going to go from, we'll do it like this. You're going to go from LA hot dogs to Mexican hot dogs to New York hot dogs, right? You've got your three-pronged structure taken care of. If you practice with a stopwatch, or you just use your watch and look down at the second hand. And like I said, you actually practice and you look at it, you can say, when I talk about LA hot dogs, it takes me a minute. When I talk about New York hot dogs, it takes me a minute and a half. When I talk about Mexican hot dogs, it takes me 2 minutes. So you'll start getting a feeling and you'll know more or less, I think I'm a little short on my LA hot dog story, or, oh, I've got a while to go on my Mexican hot dog information, right? So again, all these things, they're practice, but what you don't realize is to give you confidence, and that's what you'll need. So even like that, my DJ guy, he knew his subject really well, but did he organize? Did he put it together? No. Okay. 3, it's easier to edit and organize a written script than constantly change into notes. So what they're saying there is most people who write a speech, they bring up the piece of paper. Here's my piece of paper. They bring it up to, that long box you stand behind. That's called a lectern. So they have it there in front of them. And if they need to change something or make a mistake, they can easily reach down with their pen and do that. But if you have like a bunch of Post-it notes as your information instead of the piece of paper and you jiggle those, you really get confused. And like I said, God forbid you don't drop them. That's really a nightmare. So have a written script with you that you take up. 4, it's easier to decide whether and where in the presentation to use visual aids when you're working with a script. Okay, I'll have this to say about visual aids. I'm not a big fan of visual aids. I think people really like to listen to a speaker. But you can use visual aids to emphasize a point. Some people are more visual than others. And I'll say one last thing that I don't say a lot, but if you're a real nervous person, really hate that you have to give a speech. And like I said, when we started this class, they took a poll, a census, a survey. They found out many people would rather die than give a speech. So I understand the fear, the pain. So what I'm trying to say is I've had students where they used a lot of visual aids because what that did was take the people's eyes off of them and onto the picture or the slides. So if you're one of those folks, maybe try to use a lot of visual aids. You don't have to speak as much. People don't have to if you feel stare at you as much. Okay. And the final point, 5-0. Even if you eventually speak from notes, writing the speech out in its entirety, which means the whole speech, helps you develop your material sufficiently to be completely confident at the lectern. And that's what I've been talking to you about, is having that confidence. And And that feeling is priceless, right? It's just priceless. So continuing here where it says begin. Begin your first draft by putting down all your thoughts without worrying about length. So your very first paper, just put down all your thoughts. You're not actually writing it like an essay form. Just put your thoughts down. Don't worry about the period, the comma, all that stuff. Next, you will then go back, edit, refine, and re-edit until you have a script that you're reasonably comfortable with. And here you go. Having confidence is being comfortable, right? It's doubtful that you'll ever come up with a script that completely satisfies you. And I have to let you know, that's okay. That's a good thing. You know, there's always going to be some point where you think, I'm a little weak here. Make it up in the other paragraph, that's all. You'll probably want to make a change or two every time you look at it. It's not unusual for experienced speakers to make, and I don't mean a cherry pie, but to make changes to their notes while sitting at the head table waiting to be introduced. So what they're saying is like, you're doing your speech right now, Caroline, and I'm next. And so at the table, I'm waiting there. So instead of just waiting and listening, I'm actually making notes right before I go on, changing things. Because maybe I like something that Caroline's saying, you know. I try to steal a little information for myself, right? Okay, choose your words carefully. Ooh, sounds like a police drama. You have to make the material your own. So whatever you write, you have to make it your own. It has to sound like you. It has to be you. You can't read like for another person. It has to be from yourself. So people will believe you and identify with you. Even busy top-level executives who have speech writers to participate in the writing of their speeches. The greater the level of participation, the better. The best way to ensure, which means like to make sure, that the speech sounds like you, see, it has to sound like you, is to write the speech as if you were talking to a group of friends. And this means that you have to talk while you're writing. So it's a relaxed, comfortable speech style, like you're talking to your buddies. Remember that the audience is going to hear your words, not read them. That's why it doesn't matter how well your speech is written. If you don't say the words correctly or in this kind of tone, people will have a hard time understanding you and your speech. Speak the words out loud so that you know how they will sound. That's in your practice time. To the audience as well, that's how they look to you. To be heard naturally, a speech has to be written naturally. So, same style complements each other. Okay, here in the middle, there are two elements that make a presentation effective and convincing. Okay, remember that might be a question at the end of this lecture. What are the two elements that pura, right? One is the speaker's emotional investment in the subject. The other is the logic of the presentation. Okay. It says here, you have to capture in words the essence of your thoughts and feelings. That's a bit vague. I'll explain it better for you. Okay. So again, I'll give you one of those broad examples. Okay. Let's say, and again, I don't know if young girls do this anymore. I'll have to ask Tal or Caroline. But when I was younger, if you told your, well, if your girlfriend was angry with you, she would say, "Do you love me?" Right? And then, you know, the young guy would have to say, "Well, yes, I love you." And then usually the second question was, "How much do you love me?" I don't know if young people still do that anymore. Okay. So let's say that's the situation, right? So forget this, you have to capture in words the essence of your thoughts and feelings. No, you just have to have an emotional investment. And if you love somebody, you do. So let's say I had a girlfriend and she's like, "Oh, well, how much do you love me?" Or first she asked me, "Do you love me?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess I love you." It doesn't sound effective. It doesn't sound convincing. And she says, "Well, how much do you love me?" Uh, I love you more than kimchi. Uh, you know, I don't know. Love you more than Big Mac. Again, that's probably going to make her pissed off, make her really angry. I have absolutely no emotional investment. Yeah, sure. What? I'm here, right? What do you want? Not good. So when you speak, just don't say the words. Especially if you have to do like an argumentative or a narrative about yourself, people will not believe you. Yeah, I love you so much, honey. I gotta go to a restroom now. No one's gonna believe that at all. That's why I said earlier, you can have the best written speech, but if they don't believe what you're saying, forget it. And now if you're immersed, that means put yourself 100%, right? Yourself completely in the substance of what you want to say, and the words will come. Never feel uncomfortable about using words that let your feelings show through. So, my guys, whether it's Mr. Hong or Temujin, you're gonna have to say it. You're gonna have to tell Tall, I love you, right? You can't try to run away or I forgot what I was going to say, Tall, right? Can't do those things. Gotta let your feelings show through. You don't have to cry. I don't want you to take it that far, so don't cry. But you gotta let your feelings show through. Your talk has to be easy for the audience to follow, understand, and remember. So again, don't talk in high-level computer terms or weird kind of slang because the audience will not be able to follow, understand, and then there's no way they can remember. The unknown has to be related to the known, and the mysterious must be demystified, which is where the power of analogies, metaphors, illustrations, and examples come in. So again, what basically that means is the unknown has to be related. Anything that you know, but the audience probably doesn't know, you're going to have to explain it. You can't, like I said, if Purevi talks to me in some kind of Mongolian slang, I'm not going to be able to understand it. He's going to have to explain it, right? And you can explain by using analogies, metaphors, illustrations, okay, back to your visual aids, maybe, and examples come in use, okay? Here's one that Okay, it's a Mexican one as far as how I knew it. It's a saying. And I told it to my Korean students many years ago. And I found out they have the same saying in Korean. So they were able to understand me better in my English. So the saying was in Mexico, the translation is, you have chilies, right? Gochu. The smallest chili, which is a metaphor, right? Symbol, metaphor for a woman, right? Because women are spicy, chilies, and dangerous. Is that not the biggest chili, but the smallest chili is the spiciest. And that comes from most men having, if they've had small girlfriends or wives, they turned out to be much spicier and dangerous than the tall girls. And I guess it's the same thing in Korea. So you want to be completely understood, explain your technical terms or slang, use analogies, use metaphors, illustrations, right? I don't know if we have one like the Jeju-do women who are supposed to be strong like the wind. We don't really have that here in the United States. Okay, next. Use simple language that everyone in the audience can understand. And this is a good technique to ask yourself. Ask yourself, will the audience understand what this means? And like I told you, if you think in any way that they might not, then you better not say it or you better explain it. Buzzwords and jargon, jargon is another word for slang, should be avoided as much as possible, unless they are part of the language of the audience. So again, when I use the Prerevi using Mongolian slang, well, if his whole audience are Mongolians, then he can do that. But if American people are there, or Japanese people, Mexican people, I doubt they'll be able to understand his Mongolian jargon unless he explains it. But jargon is useful in particular contexts or situations, usually as shorthand for a more complex expression. So, if using a buzzword or two will make your talk clearer, by all means, do so. But never assume that an audience knows what a term means. Always clearly define it for the first time you use it. So I had a rough time with some students trying to explain that before. So let's say a Korean student will get up and they're going to do, like I've had some ladies do a speech on Korean cuisine, right? So they practice with me and the woman says, oh, I have to prepare the kimchi and then I have to do the other banchan. And then I stop her and I say, maybe some people who live in LA and have, American people and have gone to K-Town, they know what kimchi is, but other people probably don't. There's still a lot of people who haven't eaten Korean food. So I asked her, how you're going to have to give a definition of kimchi in English. What is it? And then she didn't know what to say. So I said, again, just because you know what kimchi is as a Korean person, but you're going to give a speech in Los Angeles, you better assume that a lot of the audience is not going to know what you're saying. So I had to get her to look it up and find out that it meant fermented cabbage, right? So then she would continue and say something else like, oh, and my husband's favorite is a Doctor Tang, I'd say, okay, there again, You know what you're talking about, but the audience doesn't know. The American people with dak, tari, tang. So I said, what is dak, tari, tang in English? It's a chicken, and just it's a chicken. Is it a live chicken or a dead chicken? Eh. So you have to know your definition. So it's a we agreed on spicy chicken and vegetables stew. Okay, so again, those are just Korean cooking terms, but if your speech is on computer terms, which even though I speak fluent English, I might not know these terms. Better be able to explain, right? So ending right here, always clearly define it the first time you use it. On the bottom, unless speaking to peers, which are your classmates or friends, on a technical subject, an engineer shouldn't sound like an engineer. Exactly. He uses engineering terms. Even American people are lost. An accountant should take great pains, which means should make a great effort, not cause himself pain, but make a great effort not to sound like an accountant. Remember earlier it was stated the speech should sound like a couple of friends talking. And a lawyer should never sound like a lawyer. Your presentation is an event that you're writing a script for, not a textbook. Your script should be conversation style. A textbook is not. So we're in the middle here. Language that is anything other than simple and conversational will get in the way of the message. So what they're saying there is you say some kind of complicated technical language, people are trying to guess what that means. And by doing so, they don't either understand the message or forget the message, trying to understand the fancy words. Okay? So language has to be simple and conversational. It's already mentioned. It must sound natural. And the secret to sounding natural is to speak in a conversational tone. The audience has to understand your words as well as hear your voice. So underline this. Understand your words. For example, say, I'll keep you up to date, rather than further notification will follow in due course. I mean, who the hell talks like that in real life? Right? That sounds like a policeman or a lawyer talking to me, right? Instead of saying, here's another example, appropriate amendments will be introduced in a timely fashion. Okay, don't say that. Tell the audience exactly what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Clearly. A person's desire for possession of material goods will on occasion overwhelm one's innate sense of prudence. I don't know one that speaks like this. It's a very elegant or fancy sentence. However, you're far more apt or able to get your message across by saying, greed often prevails or overcomes over common sense. So what that means is people have common sense, but people get greedy and they don't listen to the common sense. So that's basically like, they say the best time to leave the gambling table in Vegas is after you win. Once you win, that's the time to leave. But 99.9% of the people will stay because they say, I'm hot. So I have to play until I get cold. So I'm hot If I continue to play, I'll make more money. They just don't realize that they really got lucky right now, and that's why most win, and they keep on playing, and then they lose all their winnings. So there you go. Greed often prevails over common sense. Anytime you catch yourself saying in other words, you can delete whatever came just before. Obviously, it wasn't clear enough. And many people still make that mistake when they end their speech. They'll say something of importance in their conclusion. And then instead of just stopping, they'll say, well, in other words, because I want to say it another way that sounds fancier, now people will forget your last message and concentrate on your light conclusion. So don't say that. In other words, never use words that you have difficulty pronouncing. If you have trouble saying linoleum, say floor covering instead. If brewery is a tongue twister for you, so which is good. Construct the message or construct the sentence so that you can humorously or jokingly say, the place where they make the beer, right? Because you have difficulty pronouncing it, right? And this is really good information. If I were you, I'd pay attention to it. You say, why? I do this technique in my own life. For instance, and the reason is because whatever language you speak first, whatever your home language is, and you learn another language, there's always going to be letters and sounds that you don't have in your first language, and your tongue, at least in the beginning, maybe cannot do. So once you recognize this, and you're going to give a speech, after you do your first draft and then you edit your speech, find if there's any of these words that are in there. And then you can write them out, not say them, or use a substitute. I'll give you a couple examples. Okay. So besides new languages, you not having the ability to make the certain sounds, you can also have an accent. Now, me, I'm all for accents. I don't like people telling someone, well, you have to lose that accent so you can sound, American. I think that's crap. To me, all you have to do is sound clear, that the people understand you. You can keep your accent. But there are some cases where it can be confusing and too strong. So in that case, make an effort to try not to use those words. I'll give you an example in Spanish. Anytime a Spanish speaker is given an English word that begins in S, they have a habit from the Spanish language, because a lot of words that begin with S in Spanish have an E in front of them. Okay? So this will stick in their mind. So if you tell them, say the word shoe, they're going to say, a shoe, right? Or this is my friend Steve. And they're going to say, oh, hi, Steve, right? So until you're able to catch that, which is you know, similar to the Korean. I went to churchy after the beachy and I threw out the garbagey, right? Once you catch those, then you can train yourself to say, I went to the church after the beach and threw out the garbage, right? You just make an effort not to do these things. So, in my own experience, too, for example, I use the word chincharo because I can say it. Chincharo means like, really? There is another word that I don't have that sound in the language that I speak originally. And it's hard for me to say. So when I used to say it, Korean people could not understand me. To me, the word sounds like quiddle chi. If you say quiddle chi to a Korean person, they're going to tell you what the hell you're talking about. To them, it's a sound that goes quiddle chi, right? So I try to avoid, if I have to speak to a Korean person, not saying quiddle chi because it's hard for me. So I'll just say chincharo. It's the same meaning, right? So have your options, please. This is a very, very important strategy here that I'm talking about. Okay. That's why it even says, well, if you can't say anything, you just say, I can't say brewery. So this place where they make the beer. So here we go. A picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. Poets know this, which is why their works live on for eons. Eons means hundreds of years. That's a fancy word for you. So paint word pictures because many people are visual. Don't just say the dog. Say the shaggy little black poodle with soulful brown eyes and perfect posture. I don't know if a dog can have perfect posture, but so this gives such a big description that it's easy to see that in your eye. Or I should say your mind's eye. That's why people who do like a radio program for like the Dodger game or the Angel game, they really have to be descriptive. They don't say the pitcher has the ball and he throws it to the catcher. You know, they say pitcher looks at the first baseman, looks back, looks to third, starts his windup, kicks his foot out, brings his arm down, and pitches a fastball. So you have all this description, just like instead of the dog. Well, what kind of dog is that? Chihuahua? German Shepherd? Cockapoo? I don't know what it is. So when you say the shaggy little black poodle with soulful brown eyes and perfect posture, people get a really good picture. Paint those word pictures. If you don't paint clear images in their minds, the audience will come up with their own images. What they conjure or make up may not fit the image you're trying to create or the message you're trying to convey. Use impact words. Impact, pow! Yeah. I'm sorry if I scared you, Caroline. Smashed is stronger than broken. Because broken could be like just a little piece, doesn't always mean a big piece. But when you say smashed, oh my God, it means like something is completely destroyed. Thrilled is more descriptive than happy. Like, are you happy? Yeah, I'm happy. Are you thrilled? Oh yeah, right? More descriptive. Weary is more emphatic than tired. If weary sounds strange to you, and I know there's some words in English that sound strange, I would substitute exhausted because tired, you see somebody tired, they still be able to get up and do some things. Somebody exhausted, usually they sit down in the chair and then they fall asleep before you know it. because they're exhausted. Okay. Okay. Magnificent, we're on the top left, is more impressive than very good. A magnificent dress. Next, sweltering is a vast improvement over, well, very warm. Very warm sounds like you can take the heat, or it feels good because outside is snowing. But you say sweltering right away, you're thinking of yourself sweating. Like, oh my God, this heat is sweltering. It's killing me. So this last point, whenever you're tempted to use the word very, you should look for a more descriptive word. So here we go. In the middle on the left side. Alliteration and repetition, if not overdone, can add force to a presentation. Politicians are particularly adept, or they have a lot of ability at this. For example, we can't continually coddle criminals. Coddle means to, not to support, but it means not to get tough on them. Just kind of let them slide, let them slide. And just to make that an obvious point, if you didn't know, if you know what shoplifting is, that's when you, let's say you go inside a Walmart and then you steal some things. That's shoplifting. We, in my opinion, California is now coddling criminals. It used to be you could go into CVS, whatever, and if you stole anything, a pack of gum, they'll call the police and you'll get arrested because you're not supposed to shoplift. Now the police have been told not to bother with that, and they raised it up to don't call us unless the person and this is true, you're going to get shocked, unless the person shoplifts over $960. Otherwise, don't bother us. If you want to arrest them as a store owner, you do it yourself. So people know that now, and they'll go in and steal, let's say you went to Sephora, $200, $300, $400 of makeup, and say, well, you're not going to call the police. Bye. See you later. So that is coddling criminals. So we can't continually say coddle criminals. It is a lot catchier or a lot more popular than we must cease being soft on lawbreakers. So this alliteration, this emphasis is much better. I once heard a politician effectively establish his pacing by using the word great 4 times in a 21-word sentence. That's too much. It's great to be standing before this great audience in this great city of Nashville, in this great state of Tennessee. So obviously, too many greats. You should always have a dictionary and a thesaurus at hand while writing your speech. Time spent searching for the right word is always worth it. Discovering the perfect word will not only enliven or wake up your public speaking style, but will also help you develop an expanded vocabulary, and we all need that. This, in turn, will improve your conversational skills and make your memos, letters, and emails much more effective. The more you expand your vocabulary, the less time you'll have to spend searching for the right word or phrase. And that's a great thing in your life, in your job hunt too, to always be increasing your vocabulary, right? In the middle, pronouns. The overuse of third-person pronouns will always create problems for the audience. While you may be fully aware of what the antecedents are or what came before, The audience may have a terrible time trying to figure it out. Suppose you're halfway through an update to your board of directors on negotiations with suppliers, and you throw in this sentence. He told him that he or I would be happy to meet with either of them. Man, that's confusing. Don't be too surprised if the board misses completely what you really meant, because I missed it. So here's the alternative. Again, description. Our executive vice president, Larry Sinclair, called whom? David Collier, New Corp's vice president of operations, offering to have either Larry or me meet with David or with Mary Carlisle, their new CEO, whichever they preferred, which again is much better than I and you and him with her and us. What are you talking about? Now we'll move to dialogue. An often overlooked technique in writing a speech is the use of dialogue. Suppose you were reporting back to your PTA, that's Parents Teachers Association in schools, on a meeting you had with the chair of the Board of School of Trustees. Don't just say, I told her of our concerns, and she expressed very little interest. Even after I pressed her a bit, I didn't have any success. Sounds a little like confusing, unfiltered. Say it this way instead. I said to Ms. Henry, we are very worried that your board is not allocating enough money for school supplies in District 3. Ms. Henry said, well, every district would like more money. Okay, much more clear. You know exactly what is being talked about. Here are some more examples. I handed her our document and said, I'm sure that's true, but here's a list of items that District 3 teachers had to purchase out of their own pockets. Very detailed. All she said was, thank you. I pressed on, which means he pushed, saying, Ms. Henry, this is a very serious problem that needs to be addressed right away. She dismissed me by saying, well, thank you for taking the time to come in, meaning her office. Even when I asked, will you be bringing this to the attention of the board? All I got in reply was, I guess so, not too convincing. Note how quoting the dialogue more accurately illustrates and conveys the tone and futility, which is you realize you're not going to win, of the conversation than does the bland general description. So the second one shows the person's frustration and realizing she's not going to say what she has to say or do what she needs to do. Next, on the bottom, be positive rather than negative. And that holds true in a lot of things. I don't know if you've heard the job strategy. You go on a job interview, and even if your last job, they treated you terribly, You're doing the interview, they like you, they're probably going to hire you, and then at the last they ask you about your last job, and you just say a bunch of terrible things about your boss. Even if they are true, they don't like to hear that. They're going to feel that you're going to say the same thing about them. So at that point, you might have just lost the job. So always try to be positive rather than negative. It's usually more persuasive, which means convincing, to talk about what you are for rather than what you're against. Audiences tend to relate more favorably to positive, enthusiastic speakers than they do to sour, like a grapefruit, sour sounding whiners, which mean crybabies, and complainers. It just sounds more positive. I don't know, they didn't give me an opportunity, so I set the building on fire. They don't want to hear that. Let's suppose you're making a pitch for the government to simplify the income tax law. It'd be more effective to craft or make your speech using examples of the positive effects of tax simplification rather than the negative examples of leaving the law as it is. Use examples such as 1, now we're on the top right here, more people being able to complete and file their own income tax returns, thereby saving money on professional fees. 2, money saved by government through lower administration costs. 3, more respect from the general public for the tax laws. And you're going to use these positive ones rather, as it says right here, rather than the examples such as how upset and confused people get over filing. Oops, what happened here? Something strange happened here. Huh. There's a little gibby squabby here. What's going on? I've already gone to my, again, I have to go previous. Oh. Let me see, I'm not used to hitting this previous button. So, I don't think, is this really the end here? I'm being too kind on you guys. Let me check this again. Maybe I'll have to go through the questions with you. Let me see if there's anything after. See, nothing. Wow, okay. You guys are gonna get lucky today. Maybe I'm feeling kind because I know that next week's Thanksgiving, so why don't you get a jump on your turkey? Okay, so that's the deal on that. So I might as well, I can go through the questions with you. Why not? That won't hurt. Okay. So 1, only who would rely completely on memory for a speech? So they're talking about one personality type here. Okay? And I'll give you a hint, it's not a good one. Okay, 2. What is the number one good reason to write out your entire speech? Okay. They gave a couple of reasons, but I want you to only write the number one good reason to write out your speech. What's the benefit of it for you? What is the betterment for you than not paying attention to my advice? 3, how do you begin your first draft? Okay? I don't want funny guys like Prithvi or Temujin saying, teacher, are you talking about my first draft of beer? Well, I begin it by having a snack first, and then I drink the first beer. I'm not talking about beer. Okay, so your first writing draft. There's a certain, what's my hint for you? There's a certain technique which leads to a certain feeling about this. That's a good thing. 4, what is doubtful in writing your speech? So I wrote that one specifically confusing. So I'm going to be curious to see what the students choose for an answer. So, what is doubtful in writing your speech? Don't overthink it, and the answer will come to you. Next. 5, what do you have to do with your speech material? Again, I'll even have ladies, maybe like Pamela, and Pamela will tell me, what do you have to do with your speech material? Throw it in the garbage, right? No, maybe after the class and you get an A in the class and you can throw it in the garbage if you want. But not before. 6, what are the 2? See, there's that question. I told you it's going to come up. I wasn't lying. Giving you advice. What are the 2 elements that make a presentation effective and convincing? So any way you can think about that to do it, do it. You know, if I ask the ladies, what are the 2 elements that will make you marry me? And then maybe, so he tells me, if you were rich and if you were handsome, those are the 2. Yeah. Right? Uh-oh, better not apply. So here are the 2 elements in the presentation. If you remember them, one will make it effective speech, and one will make it convincing. Okay. 7, how must your talk, there's a missing, I'm going to get my writer here. It should say how much your talk be before the audience. Okay. So how's it supposed to be? What is the style, right? It's supposed to be, hey, shut up. That's a style your speech is supposed to be? I don't think so. Or is it the opposite? Your speech is supposed to be so quiet they can't hear you. What is the guy talking about? No, it's a certain style that will help you be understood by all. 8, what should be avoided as much as possible? There are some things that should be avoided as much as possible when you give your speech. What are they? So again, is it, can I take off my shoes and my socks are dirty? No, it's not what we're talking about. I mean, you should avoid that too, but no. 9. What will get in the way of your message? So there's something that you will do on the negative side that can get in the way of your message. Your message is the most important thing you want the audience to go away with. Again, like sometimes it might be the reverse with ladies. A lady says, I want to do a makeover and look beautiful and wear something sexy when I give my speech. And I'll tell her, well, at least for the men that saw your speech, they never heard it because they were looking at you and how pretty and sexy you look. They never. What was the message of her speech, guys? Lipstick, short dress. I don't know anything. So think of something that you do that will get in the way of your message. And then don't do it. 10. What kind of words should you never use? Again, this is a category. So there's a certain category of words that you should never use. And I'm not talking about baby words either, like da da goo goo ka ka. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm trying to give you a hint, right? 11. The overuse of a third person pronoun will always do what? It will have what kind of effect on your speech? Okay. And 12, the last one. Audiences relate better to what? Okay, so that's a tricky one that you really have to look into your information for, the lecture material. So don't get funny and say something like, audience relate better to what? Free popcorn and a soda and then maybe some licorice. No, forget that kind of audience. You're not a movie theater. So the hint here is, again, a style technique. There's a bad style and a good style technique. So tell me the good style technique and audiences will relate better to that, okay? So I spent time explaining these because we had some extra time. And I'm feeling kind because I know Thanksgiving is around the corner. Yeah, get a tear in my eye, you know. So anyway, that's it for today. We stopped a little early, again, having that holiday spirit. So I shall see you guys soon. Do your homework and, enjoy your holiday, okay? So I'll see you soon, okay? Bye-bye.